Hello, welcome to the third program of Circle of Art, which is an encounter with the dramaturg Irene Moundraki. But before I introduce our guest, a few words about who we are and what it is that we do. I am Andrew Visnevski. I'm the director of Kalamata Drama, an umbrella for education and cultural events based in the town of Kalamata in the Peloponnese. Kalamata Drama represents the ongoing collaboration of two organizations devoted to promoting initiative and innovation in the performing arts. The Maria Callas Alumni Association of the Music School of Kalamata and Theatre Alive in the United Kingdom. The core of our activity, the annual Kalamata Drama International Summer School, is now going into its fourth year. With generous support from the Bareva Foundation in Liechtenstein, we are able to develop the Circle of Art. Circle of Art is a series of webinars, events, cultural encounters, and provocations, I hope, in Kalamata on the subject of theatre making. These are scheduled to run until 2023. A little about our guest today. Irene Moundraki was awarded her PhD in theatre studies by the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens. She also studied arts at the University of Milan in Italy. She's head of drama, library, archive, and international collaborations departments of the National Theatre of Greece. She's a visiting professor at the departments of theatre studies at the universities of Athens and of the Peloponnese. She teaches history of theatre and dramaturgy at the Piraeus Society Drama School. She's also founder and leader of the Greek Play Project, which is a dynamic platform in Greek and in English for the promotion and study of contemporary Greek theatre. She's a published writer on theatre and a theatre critic, whose books, articles, and essays have been published in Greece and abroad. She has been invited to speak about theatre at numerous conferences, both in Greece and abroad. She's also president of the Consultative Committee of Theatre on the Theatre Grants of the Ministry of Culture, and also vice president of the Hellenic Association of Theatre and Performing Arts Critics. Most importantly, and vitally for our conversation this evening, she is the dramaturg of the National Theatre of Greece. Irene, welcome to Circle of Art.
Thank you.
To many of us who work in theatre, and certainly to people who are outside of the theatre, dramaturgy is a mysterious word. And although their presence is established, the function of a dramaturg in theatre still lacks definition. I think the oldest definition we have is by Gotthold Lessing. He was the first to define dramaturgy in the Hamburg Dramaturgy of 1767-69 as, quote, the study of dramatic composition and representation of the main elements of drama upon the stage. To us today, that is really more associated with the director's job, while the contribution of the dramaturg to the creative process and education in the world of live theatre or live performance generally has grown and shifted. In the UK, the notion of a dramaturg's association with theatre and with training for the theatre is still being negotiated. And although it is widely accepted, it carries many unknowns. So I hope that our encounter with you, Irene, will perhaps find a much broader understanding for us of the dramaturg's role, and perhaps something of a demystification of the word. So if I may start with the first question, when did you first encounter dramaturgy as a profession?
First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I feel very honored and flattered to be here. And I want to be honest with you, I'm not sure I can answer all the questions because I cannot really answer the question when I first encountered myself as a dramaturg. You know, when I entered the University of Athens many years ago in 1994, our Department of Theatre Studies at the Athens University was something completely new.
Uh-huh.
The first scientists of theater, the first experts of theater, the first theatrologists, I don't know what is the right word to use even now, was something completely new. And the first scientists were about to get their bachelor degree, but still nobody knew what these young people were about to face. And the most important, there was no space, no room for these people waiting for them in the professional theater. I still remember my first day at the university. We were in this welcome meeting with our professor, Walter Buchner, who was one of the founders of the department, along with Spiros Evangelatos, the famous director. And he looked at us and said, if you think that after your studies you will find a job, you'd better go out and seek something else to study. And the word dramaturg is not something I really encountered during my studies. You know, we use so much the word theatrologos, theatrologist, like archaeologist or philologist, which is something like an expert in academic studies for theater. Dramaturg also means in Greek dramatist, playwright, which makes the confusion even much greater. Of course, while studying Brecht in a seminar with Platon Mavromoustakos, I think it was in the last year of my studies at the university, I found for the first time dramaturg as a word and as a faction, and there I started to realize, to suspect what a dramaturg could really be. And then when I went to Italy, I never heard about this word. I never had during my course there in Milan the word dramaturg. And to tell you the truth, I didn't really know what my part is, what my function in the theater is for many years. And I found it out when I started to work. I was trying to find it out, giving at the same time fights to make room for me and my colleagues, my fellows. But I was really blessed during my course because I collaborated with some people that gave me the chance to work on my field, and they helped me to understand my faction. And if I'm not saying too much, I would like to refer to people that helped me a lot. Can I?
Yes. Of course, please, please. We should always acknowledge the people that helped us.
So the first one was Nikos Mastorakis, a theater director. And when I went to the National Theatre to do my stage, he asked at the artistic director Nikos Kourpoulos at that time for a dramaturg because he was about to direct Rover by Afra Ben. And Nikos Mastorakis had studied in Germany, so he knew the work of a dramaturg. And he asked to the National Theatre a dramaturg that could help with the study of the era, all the material regarding the historical context, the playwright, the analysis of the characters, and things like that. And the director, the artistic director, said, "Okay, yes." So here I am, and I think that I'm the first professional dramaturg to do that at the National Theatre. And in a way, I owe him my career afterwards.
Yes,
And,
and the second person?
and the second person is Eleni Varopoulou, because she's a bright mind. She studied theater in France with Bernard Dor, and she was an acclaimed theater critic and consultant at the National Theatre of Greece. So I
Yes.
worked by her side for almost 10 years, realizing the Summer Academy of Theatre at the National Theatre. That was a post-educational, I would say, site-specific program that needed a very strong dramaturgical preparation. because
Yes.
every year the subject was tied with the plays we selected, and all the workshops and materials were organized on this base.
I see. So, in fact, this was the introduction of the profession of dramaturg in Greek theatre.
In a way, yes, because as I told you, it is a quite new profession. It is not something to surprise us, because, as I told you, only in 1990 the first department of theater studies was created. And it
Yes.
is also important to know that there were no schools, not even academies, even not only for dramaturgs, but not even for theater directors until very recently.
Of course,
So
that I know, yes.
yes, you know that very well. So it is important to understand that the Greek theater had a lot of problems to deal with, and that the picture of free professional theater was mainly formed in a great degree in the decade of the 80s. And there were many questions to be answered, and the Superman director was the absolute authority until then. It was everything about him. And I say him because it was, and in a way it is, a mainly man-occupied territory.
So
Uh,
it's a male domain. It certainly was at the time, a male domain.
it was at the time, and in a way it still is.
We'll come
Mm,
back to that.
we'll
We'll
come
come back
back
to
to
the
it.
question because
Okay.
I'll be very interested in the role of a woman in Greek theatre. That's a
Yes.
different issue. But so you started so in a way you found your placement as a dramaturg beside a director at the theatre, and it started with what? Critical thinking, research? Can I just go back to
You
your
know,
first job?
I can tell you a short story just to make people understand how the situation was. Well, when I went to the National Theatre to do that stage, I told before, there was an old, quite old actor that he was working at the moment as a stage manager. And I went there to introduce myself as a dramaturg, and he said to me, "Just a moment, little girl. Are you a director?" I said, "No." "Are you an actress?" "No." "Are you a set or a costume designer?" I said, "No." "So are you at least an assistant?" he asked me, and I said, "No." And he told me, "Then you are not needed." I was astonished by the cruelty of his words, and the easiness that he was canceling my studies and my dreams to be part of the theater process. But that was the reality in Greek theater in the late 90s for any aspiring dramaturg.
I
So
understand.
I remember many fellows going to do their stages at theater, their studies at theater, and they were asked to work at the box office or at the reception of the audience or sell the program, all these kind of jobs, and nothing to do with the job they were supposed to do, and that the university was sending them in order to practice. Once there was an artistic director, I remember, who wanted to hire dramaturgs in our bookstore, claiming that this is a perfect job for a dramaturg because we know the history of theater, we know the playwrights, we know the plays, so we can sell better than anyone else.
So slowly, you had to establish
Yes.
what it is that you do, why you're called dramaturgs, and what function you play in theatre. That's what it became over the next 20 years.
Exactly, because that was the mentality. And this was the way they knew what theater is. Till then, there were some people who were considered to be experts on theater studies. Most of them, they were coming from the classic studies or they were philologists. And that sometimes they had a collaboration with a director if he wanted something very specific, mostly like an advisor or a consultant, something like that. but we dramaturgs, we created little by little our field, and
Exactly.
we saw it in order to give fruits for the future. So I remember myself and my fellows trying to work with directors, very timid, very timid. I remember myself frightened in front of their authority, and most of the artistic crew and the actors considering me as a kind of a second assistant director, or the girl to bring the coffees and take notes and things like that. But I think it is a mentality that changed little by little, and there
And
are
what
some.
helped? What factors helped to change it?
I can say that dramaturgs are very educated people with severe theoretical armory that
Mm,
proved with their presence in the process of the rehearsals how useful they can be. Uh, Also, there were a lot of young directors who at the moment studied or traveled abroad, and they get to know the function that the dramaturg can have in this creative process. And
mm,
then they tried it for themselves. They asked from the new experts coming from the university their help. And also another factor is that the productions were multiplied because we had experts from the university, but also we had much more actors. We had a lot of drama schools functioning in
of course.
the decades of the 90s. And
Mm.
so a lot of young artists were entering the professional ring with new ideas. But I have to say, I can say that I'm very proud to call myself a first generation dramaturg.
So let's progress. Let's think about defining the role for those of us who are curious about it and still want to find out and really cannot pretend that we know everything about dramaturgy. So leaving aside certain sociological definitions, the formal modern definition of dramaturgy in relation to theatre making is the art or technique of dramatic composition and of theatrical representation, or the theory and practice of dramatic composition. This definition limits the dramaturg to the area usually occupied by the dramatist, the playwright, and the theatre director, but fails to embrace the very large scope of your work, because I know how, what an enormous field you cover. So what does a dramaturg do at the National Theatre of Greece?
Oh my God, I have suffered so much to give definition of my work. And
Yes.
sometimes I cannot even answer that question to my son. I always fail. But I will give myself a chance again.
Right.
So I could say that the work of a dramaturg at the National Theatre has two fields. The first one is our work as a literary manager.
Uh-huh.
And the
Well, that is what's
second,
usually associated in England.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
with the
And,
work.
and the second one is the production dramaturg.
Ah,
And there is a third field that I cannot nominate, I cannot give a title to it. It's all the parallel events happening in the theater and the bureaucracy and things like that. Let's go to the first part, the function as a literary manager. So we dramaturgs of my department, we collect all the proposals coming in the theater from the artists, and not only playwrights but also directors, and everybody is allowed to send its proposal at the theater. So we read them, we study them, and we evaluate them. Here I need to clarify something. We are not consulting the playwrights about their plays. This is a completely different job that we can do, but for special projects. We evaluate the proposals according, of course, their qualities, but also the main axes and the needs of our repertory every time. So then we discuss our proposals with the artistic director, and we also propose by ourselves plays and directors. Then, when the decisions are made, we work with the directors for the casting, for the translation, for whatever is needed regarding the creative process. Then the dramaturg also prepares the theoretical material for the director or the actors, prepares and writes the text for the other departments of the theater, like the promotional department that needs material to work, and also is in charge for the material in the editions of the theater. I think in a few words, this is the process for.
So that is the preparatory process. What about the rehearsal? That's a different
Yes.
field, isn't it?
Yes, it's a different field, as you say. The National Theatre, and I think this is very important to be mentioned, since 2008, when Yannis Kouvardas was the artistic director of the theatre, has always a dramaturg involved during the rehearsals. I mean a dramaturg from the National Theatre. Even if a director comes and says, okay, I have my collaborator, a dramaturg that I always work with, and I need him or her for my production, we say, okay, you can have him or her, but the theater also will have a dramaturg of its own in the process. So our dramaturg has the part of the clear eye, a person who is involved, but not too much in the process, in order to be, I would say, a cool observer. So the dramaturg can discuss with the director, have opinion, work with him, and it depends on the level that the director wants him or her involved.
Yes, I understand. So let's then move on, because this is a very, very difficult area. And there are some directors who are extremely difficult and possessive about their work and their area of engagement in the production. So from your experience, what's the relation between a dramaturg and a theatre director? Say that a theatre director is invited to you and is told you will have a dramaturg of the National Theatre, because that is part of the way we work here. So what makes for a successful collaboration between a director and the dramaturg in your experience?
Okay. That's a hard thing to describe, because the relation between a dramaturg and the theatre director is always something that has to be tested and redefined every time.
Absolutely.
First of all, the dramaturg in every collaboration has to establish a relation with the director.
Yeah.
And many things are dependent on the house you're working in, if this is not the National Theatre, but in general, but the whole team, and of course the room that the director is willing to give to the dramaturg, and what is the expectation that the director has from the dramaturg, because not all the directors are ready or willing to work with the dramaturg, or sometimes they like the option, but they don't like the realization of this collaboration. What I mean, very often I meet directors who are really keen to work with a dramaturg in a more, I would say, old-fashioned way, which means they want the dramaturg collaboration regarding the research about the play, the playwright, the era, the historical context, the philosophical and political aspects, for example. They want from us to prepare the material and to present it to the director or the whole group and the actors. But afterwards, they really don't want us to intervene during the rehearsals.
In other words, the collaboration stop. Well, sorry, it's not even a collaboration. So they expect the dramaturg to make a contribution, but not to take part in the collaborative process of making the production. I see.
Yes, yes. And this is, and if we don't vibe well, because this is very important, then all the thing is becoming harder.
Yeah.
And but even for myself, sometimes I read the text and or I discuss with the director and I wonder, do I want to be in this room with these people? Can I contribute to the conversation? It's from both sides it can happen, but then you have to find the way to make it work. But there are some directors who really respect and acknowledge the work of the dramaturg. And this is a wonderful process when you have a director who wants to take advantage of you, to take the best from you. The
Of
most
course.
important is to have a relation of trust. I do not want to be a friend with the person I work with. I want to be a valuable collaborator and a person who sits by his side, and I see myself as a stimulant, as a person who is ready to say the truth, even if it hurts sometimes. And many times I say something to a director and he says, no, it's not right. And then the next day, the director comes to the rehearsal with a brand new idea of his own. And I don't mind at all because this is part of the job.
That you
Sometimes,
stimulated the thinking.
yes, exactly. So sometimes you need to know to choose the right moment to say something. And many times I also find myself as a, I don't know if this is the right word in English, as a balancer between the, is it right?
Well, equalizer maybe is a
Equalizer,
better.
yes, that's perfect. Equalizer between the different aspects
Yes.
coming in the room from the actors, the director, the rest of the creative team. But
Yes.
every time the relation you have with the director is unique.
Yes, it's interesting that because without a clear definition of the role, it's interesting what you've just said, the equalizer, the stimulant, the observer from outside, because but if one doesn't know that, one tends to think that perhaps the dramaturg is doing the job that the director is responsible for doing, which is being an equalizer and seeing everything from every angle. So I think maybe there are some directors that feel uncomfortable with anybody else doing their job. And there are some directors who will be very grateful to have somebody like that in rehearsal.
Uh, I think, Andrew, that has to do with the way the director thinks about himself or herself and how secure feels with it. But
Of course.
normally it's another work. The director has another function, the dramaturg has another function in the creative process. It is as if we say that the set designer or the light designer is in danger because the director says what he or she needs. No, the dramaturg is a part of a mechanism like all the other members of the creative team.
Right.
And
So we move into the creative team because in England, especially, that's from my experience, there's a very clear definition of what is a creative team. So by a creative team, we mean the writer or the librettist, if we're working on a ballet or an opera, and the composer, the stage director, the designer, the lighting designer. I think that's as far as it goes. But do you believe that the creative team of a production, whether it be for theater or for opera or ballet, requires the presence of a dramaturg?
I have to say yes.
Well, you're not going to write yourself out of a job, but then qualify why.
Yes.
What is it that that your presence adds?
None of all the members that you mentioned is really a known authority, including the dramaturg, of course. Every member of the team has a specific task to fulfill the very concrete group work. I believe that theater, and we all know that is the most teamwork art, and that makes it so special. Even if we start from a specific personal vision, the
Mhm.
vision is enhanced by the ideas, the personalities, the atmosphere, the qualities that the team and the actors are bringing in. And I think this is the magic of theater, sometimes also the catastrophe of a project.
It can be, yes.
But I would dare to say that the dramaturg is like the joint in tiles. It makes
Mhm.
it all come together with its magic wand.
I understand. So, a dramaturg positively and creatively contributes to the rehearsal process. In that case, would you describe yourself? This is a vicious, nasty question. Would you describe yourself as an expert consultant or as a creative contributor?
Both of them, both of them. I cannot really put a borderline because sometimes I find myself to act as an expert consultant, especially when the director has something very specific on mind. And if he wants to work on something that he has decided and he needs to sustain it, to stand up for it on theoretical, historical, or philosophical base. And
Uh-huh.
this can be a very honest way to work.
Yes.
And then when you do your work, which is mainly with work with the team and not with the actors, then he doesn't want your extra involvement. So in this way, the director doesn't want you as a creative contributor. But that's happened. But for myself, I prefer to be a creative contributor, to sit by their side and help with everything that comes out. And I think that clever and self-confident directors always prefer that.
I think so. I think you're right. I think a midwife is a very, very good function to a creative midwife to facilitate the happening, facilitate uh, the epiphany of some idea, the epiphany of something that is happening in the company, but it hasn't quite happened on stage yet. So I suppose a dramaturg requires many, many skills, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I have a list, and I will check the list now because I cannot
Oh, you
answer
have
all
a
that.
yes, go on. What is your list of specialities that
So
you have?
I have so many things to say about that. So first of
Yes.
all, a strong theoretical background, not
Mm.
only in theater history, plays and playwrights, but also knowledge on philosophy, on sociology, on humanities.
Mhm.
Then appetite for research and study in order to gather the appropriate material for the specific production or project. And for this, it needs investigating skills,
Yes.
critic brain,
Mhm.
analytical abilities to understand and work out the history and social context of the text or of the project that the dramaturg is working for. Ability to work on the text, to analyze it, understand the construction parts, to reveal the different layers, ability to gather the essential of our research and study and convey our knowledge to the others.
Yes.
Very important for me to know our language in depth, to speak. If the dramaturg is Greek, very well Greek or English to
Of course, to find the best expression for
yes,
everything.
exactly. Thank you
The
very
exact,
much.
the exact expression. Yes, no, I agree with you 100%. That sometimes you work with a text that's not quite finished, or there is an improvisation going on, or whatever it is, it has to find the best expression.
Exactly. Writing skills,
Indeed.
ability to make notes during the rehearsals,
I'll come back to this one. I mean, it interests me very much.
Yeah.
Yeah. What else? But also you lead discussions, don't you? You take things out of rehearsal. You do seminars, you do
yes,
discussions.
seminars, workshops, and for example, I have curated many times several exhibitions regarding the material of the theater. And also, if I want to add some things on the list, to be cool, not to involve too much, to know where is your limit, and to know that we're not always right.
Everybody's very touchy in a rehearsal room. Everybody's very nervous,
yes,
and they don't like.
There's so many egos in the rehearsal room,
That's
so
right.
you have to respect them and know until where you can go, and also to know that we are not always right, because sometimes we dramaturg we think we know everything. To be a facilitator of the process, and create engagements, create engagement events around the productions you work for.
That's very interesting. Two small questions come out of that. One, you say you keep rehearsal notes. Obviously, because then you want to revise what's happened in the rehearsal, you want to discuss it with the director. Do you use those notes then also if you write books, if you write critical essays? Do you use those notes as well as part of your personal experience of something that's happened, or if you write books, do you use it, or essays, do you write more theoretically, hypothetically, theoretically?
It's a combination of both of them that you mentioned. Sometimes I use these notes during the rehearsal process, because we start from a point and we go and during the process we forget where we started from and where we wanted to go. And these notes are helping very much to remember why you did something, why you have chosen something. But except this, after the production, these notes are kept at the National Theatre, and this is a valuable archive for the scientists of the future when they want to search for something about the production or about the director or about something of their interest. And I also use these notes many times for my lectures or for my essays.
Very interesting. This is an enormous scope. So you've taken over the director's job, you've taken over the dramatist's job, you've taken over the critic's job. It's brilliant. And it is such a wide scope of things that you need to put together in any situation. But what studies can possibly prepare one for this?
Theater studies, first of all. It is important to have a theoretical background, and I'm not talking about only the knowledge that is given in the university during these 4 years of studies, but also the knowledge that comes from our personal everyday study. You know, the theater is a living thing, is a living organism, and we should always be prepared. Everything is changing every day. Of course, you can not know everything, but when you don't know something, you need to know where to search to find it. And also it is very important to know some practical things about the theater, the creative process, the rehearsals. So I believe that theory and practice should go along, because if you want to work in the theater, the studies you get from the university are not enough. The knowledge you get from the university is not enough. Perhaps with special workshops and seminars and apprentices, you can prepare yourself. And also it has to do with the personal goals that you put, as in every science. Things are moving really fast and we have to move fast with them, but in depth. Yet, because one very important thing is that we live in an era that everything has to do with the speed. And this sometimes leads us to work superficially. And this is a great danger. The dramaturg ought to dive in the depth.
I think that is a very, very interesting and incisive point, that the dramaturg helps the production constantly remain at a deeply critical level of its own work. I find that particularly interesting and stimulating. Now, in the description of your work, if we move to how you describe your work, it seems to me from what you have said, you have to keep your fingers, your hand on the pulse of so many events going on. So you're not only, I assume that you're not only keeping abreast of theatrical developments going on in Greece and outside of Greece, but also of social events and historic events that are happening around us. Am I right in thinking that?
Absolutely. You have to follow every day what is happening. You have to reflect on what is happening, because everything can be a useful material for you.
Well, if theatre grows out of what is around us, if theatre is indeed a reflection, an artistic reflection of the world around us, then I would have thought the dramaturg is the person who is the most sensitive, dramatist and the dramaturg, both sensitive to the changes. After all, and we'll come back to this later, because I'd like to talk about the future generation, the young people that you see in training, and I have contributed to the training of in this contemporary world of today, a very strange and world where things are unpredictable from day to day. But there's one area I'd like to pursue. In the United Kingdom, when I was teaching, I was very happy to work with dramaturgs at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, who would guide potential script writers. Well, first of all, they would introduce them to the concept of dramaturgy, of what it is, how they see it, what it is personally to them, and allow them to read in a critical fashion, allow them to perceive things within the context of today and the context of the past, of when things were written. But then also they mentored and guided them in script writing. Now, is mentorship to a dramatist or a librettist, again, being the midwife, the facilitation of a dramatic text, do you see that as part of your work? And if so, how does one separate then the contribution of the dramaturg from what the dramatist is supposed to be doing?
Perhaps this is one of the major misconceptions of our work. What does the dramaturg does and what the dramatist does?
Yes.
And this has to do with what I said before about the meaning of the words, the dramaturg and dramatologos. The dramatist is the one who writes the play. Sometimes the dramaturg is the person who gives the idea, the guidelines, and then is always there to support the dramatist, to supply material, to supervise the process in order not to miss the main goals. And it is true that there is a question about the final product. As dramaturgs and dramatists sometimes collaborate so close that both has contributed a lot to it. And it's not easy to decide who has the responsibility of the final product. I have not a concrete answer to give. It depends on them to decide, I think. But for me, one of the most important things that the dramaturg can do is the new work development. And I love to work with young playwrights, to stimulate them, to give them new tools.
So indeed, are you currently engaged in dramaturgy of new plays and the selection or dramaturgical assistance in creative writing? How do you see your present contribution to modern Greek drama at the moment? In the widest scope, you're welcome to bring in other areas rather than just writing.
Well, I have been a member of several committees.
Yes.
In national institutions, in private institutions, or in the European Theatre Convention. I have organized myself to contests on new work, new plays with the Greek Play Project. The reading of new plays, of contemporary Greek dramaturgy, is something I do almost every day. I think there is no week in my life that I haven't read at least 2 or 3 new plays. I read just to think that I read almost all the proposals that come in the National Theatre. I read the plays that the playwrights send me at the Greek Play Project. I read the proposals at the Committee of the Ministry for the last 5 years. This is a great amount of plays, and
yes.
I'm very often surprised. I think the most important is that during all these years and through my work, I have built a trust connection with many playwrights, and they send me their plays before they finish them, or sometimes before everybody else. I tell them my opinion, I work on them. And this is something that is really important. And I try to transmit it also to my students at the Master of the Theatre Studies at the University of Athens, where I lead a dramaturgy workshop. An exercise I do with them, and I think it's a very good way to introduce them with contemporary dramaturgy, is that I give them new plays just written, some of them not at all in their final edition yet, to read them. And they ask from them to write critical essays without knowing who is the playwright, free of the name of the playwright. And the results are fascinating, not only because this is a way for young dramaturgs to get to know the modern dramaturgs of their country, which makes me really angry when professionals, they don't know the dramaturgy of their own country, but also because they often contribute in a very positive way for the playwrights with their feedback. And as I told you, the new play development is what I like perhaps the most.
Yes.
Last summer, for example, I took over the dramaturgy of a festival in Crete, the Roca Festival, and 6 new plays were written, committed by me and with my guidance, in order to be performed in a very site-specific project. And also we have worked a lot with young playwrights at the National Theatre of Greece. We were leading for about 5 years the studio for young playwrights. And some of these people started their career there because we had a program where they had the chance not only to write, not only that someone was telling them what is good to write or not, or how to create their characters, their plot, but also they had the chance to work with actors and check what they were doing at the moment of its creation. And I think this is really important.
I think it's fascinating and indeed very important, but it seems to me a little bit, unless setting aside your own published books and your own published essays, don't you ever feel that you're actually, back to my favorite word, midwife or facilitator or a builder for other people?
No, no, not at all. It's not like that. I guess that what you mean is that the dramaturg works too much and the director or the playwright gets the credit. But that's okay. The director gets the credit, but he will get the blame if something goes wrong too.
Well, that's
So
absolutely right. That's
yes,
just.
but on the other hand, the whole team shares the result with one or another way. I like to think a little bit broader. I
Mhm.
want to collaborate with all people involved and in a way to drift them, to inspire them, to create a
To support them, to
to
push them
support them,
forward.
to help this vision
Yes.
to speak to the needs of each of them, not only
Mhm.
just the director or me or the playwright. And I think the most important for me is that with my work, with our work with our fellow dramaturgs, we are building also a better future for the dramaturgs to come, because
Mm.
they will not have to prove that they are necessary. And this will give them the chance, this will give them the freedom to work undisturbed, to do more, to open new paths on our field.
Yes. So how do you see the situation for contemporary Greek dramaturgy? What is the, give me a general picture, and what do you think the future holds?
Um, when we want to talk about contemporary Greek dramaturgy, there's a main question. What is that? The
Yes.
problems trying to answer that question are many. And first of all, we cannot have clear limits of time and of trends, of problematic, of tendencies. Um, at the moment, one can find on Greek stages plays following the realistic and genre standards that dominated during the decades of the 60s and the 70s, successors of surrealism and the absurd theater, also coming from the 60s, deconstruction work, transcriptions, dramatizations of texting events, attempts in contemporary forms and new ways of telling stories. And also we have the demands of the contemporary life for new thematic orientations, the elimination of national characteristics, man as a member of the global scene, of an open world, of the European Union, of osmosis, on its results, the question of national identity and the importance of diversity, hot social issues such as poverty, immigration, the COVID-19, key issues and anxieties of
Yes.
human existence are also always here. And within this context, there is a growing movement in modern Greek dramaturgy with a diverse landscape where older and younger playwrights meet, different approaches, different material and voices, but with a very strong message to deliver in a world that is being transformed, I would say. But we can't really talk about the upcoming of the dramaturgy if we do not create the mechanisms to support it.
That's
There
right.
must be a system, an institution that will take on the education, the exercise, the practice, the improvement of the playwrights. And theaters should be motivated to produce good plays. And artists should be animated to work on their own dramaturgy. And this is the only way to work. And then we should invest in our plays, create programs of translation, translate books, issues, but not occasionally as we do at the moment, but on a permanent base, with a long-term plan. I personally, I trust very much Greek playwrights, and this is the reason I created the Greek Play Project that has no financial support from anywhere. It is a platform in Greek and English for the encouraging of the Greek dramaturgy. But if there is no a will from the state to help Greek dramaturgs, Greek playwrights to develop, and if we don't see the future, not just now what's happening, if we do not have a long-term plan, then we cannot really speak for the upcoming of the Greek theater.
And no, it's true. There'll be little for the dramaturgs to support if there is no true development of Greek theatre. Well, that brings us to the side slightly to go off track for a moment. That brings me to the aspect of training for theatre, of professional training. We very briefly mentioned about training directors, and as we know, it is only very recently that Stathis Livathinos, while he was artistic director of the National Theatre, instituted the training for theatre directors.
Exactly, just 5 years ago.
It's almost unbelievable that the first training for directors, of which I'm very proud to have been member of the teaching team for the first year, and they're graduating now due to all the delays due to COVID. The young people are graduating now. It's hard to believe this is the first generation of trained theatre directors.
Exactly, because there is also the Department of Theatre Studies in Thessaloniki that has a branch for theatre directors and for stage designers and theatre experts, but you know, it was a demand for many years to have a school where someone can go directly and give exams for becoming a theatre director. Because until now, it was just only people that had the chance to go abroad to study, or otherwise there were many actors that had studied in a drama school, and then with their experience and their personal work, they were moving to the direction.
To become directors, yeah.
And there's no, and still there's no official academy, official department for dramatists.
Fascinating. Right, going back to our poor dramaturg finding their way through Greek theatre, I would like to talk a little bit about an issue that is hot at the moment in England, about assessing the financial worth of a dramaturg's contribution. You see, I think it must be very difficult to create a contract specifying a dramaturg's contribution to the workings of a creative institution and to set a financial worth to it. I mean, you know, what do you say? You're going to sit by the director, take notes and prod him from time to time so that he can work better, and then you're paid by the hour. Let's just discuss this a little bit. We're not going to find, I know we're not going to find a solution to it, but let's just think about the worth.
So that hurts a lot.
I bet it hurts, yes. I'm sure it hurts.
Because the truth is that most of the times we're not well paid, not to say not paid at all. And this is the same problem that happens with all artists. As your work is not something measurable, not a specific project you deliver, is not assessed at the same way. And most of the times, people ask for your time, your knowledge, your professional signature, but they don't want to pay for it. Not even the ministries. Everybody wants you to work free of charge. They ask you to write text for them. They pay the text editor, the graphic designer, the publisher, not the dramaturg.
Not the dramaturg.
Not the
No,
dramaturg.
you provide external free
Yes,
contribution. Absolutely.
but I'm sorry, but we have to say to everybody that our work is not a hobby. And the problem with theater is general. For example, you go to the grocery and the greengrocer asks you, what are you working? What is your work? And when you say that you work in the theater, they say, okay, when you have your opening night, can you please give me an invitation to come? And he thinks it's normal while he demands his money for the fruits you're gonna get. And I doubt that he would ever ask the same thing from an accountant, for example. No,
It's
just
very interesting. Yes, it's very curious. I've never encountered it in England, but I've already encountered it here in Greece. I think the relationship is slightly different. Many people in England, I think there are still parents that would not like their children to go into theatre because they think it's a hobby rather than a profession. But that's less than it was 40, 50 years ago. But I've never encountered a greengrocer asking me for an invitation to my next show, but I have encountered it here in Kalamata, people asking me, when will you do your next show for Kalamata Drama, and could you please invite me? That I have had. So obviously it is in the blood to be invited to the theatre.
and this is important to say to young fellows that they shouldn't work for free.
Absolutely.
We have to say that. Don't work for free. Charge something.
Yeah, but that interestingly, in England, we have to train our actors not to work for free because actors are taken advantage of by producers as well. It's a very difficult point. There are people that still assume that you can give of your craft, of your art for nothing.
But here, Andrew, after the economic crisis and after the pandemic issue, you know, a lot of actors, a lot of artists, they pay in order to work.
They contribute
for the production, exactly. They have to pay in order to work. And,
the world is changing.
This is very dangerous because there are a lot of bad people outside looking to find victims to work under the fear, under the, and I can understand it that they have a lot of people that they will not find a job, they will not have the chance to show their work otherwise.
I think it's the balance between, well, I'm working with a very exciting company, but they're not paying me, or you sit in a cafe, you've been out of work for 9 months, and people ask you what you do, and you say you're an actor. Well, are you? It's terribly difficult.
Yeah, but and you lose connection.
Well, exactly. You're an actor in your heart, but you're not actually doing anything, and you're constantly waiting for somebody to engage you. But I think theatre has always been like, and this hasn't changed in the 40 years I've been in theatre. In your contact with dramaturgs internationally, what are the difficulties and obstacles you find that they internationally, as well as you, most commonly encounter?
That's funny, but more or less we all face the same problems. Except, of course, countries like Germany, Austria, or Belgium, where things are much clearer and the dramaturgs have occupied a high role in the hierarchy. Most of the times I exchange with dramaturgs. The main problem is the undefined work we have to do, the underpaid situation, and that every time we have to start from the beginning.
In other words, you have to create your own work. You have to define your own work over and over.
Exactly. And another project, I try to work with my postgraduate students at the university, is the understanding of how dramaturg is perceived worldwide. I'm always interested in creating bridges and connecting people. So I did working couples. I mixed a Greek dramaturg with a non-Greek director. So I used directors from Yale, USA, from China, the Shanghai Academy, from the Academy of St. Petersburg, from Poland, Italy, Prague, etc. So each dramaturg had the chance to work on a specific project that I had pre-selected with the director. The results were really fantastic because every dramaturg had to work in a very different way, because in every country, the director is expecting something completely different from the dramaturg. And of course, there were some couples that failed because there were some directors that they couldn't use the dramaturg. For example, the Italian director couldn't work with the dramaturg. But the next time I'm gonna have also a Greek director, because this time I didn't. But
and find out. So you're saying that some directors naturally worked with the dramaturg and some completely blocked from them.
But it's the same worldwide. It's not just a Greek thing.
It's
you know?
worldwide. So it is worldwide, indeed.
That
Well,
was
that's what
proved.
we're saying, that the dramaturg's role still needs defining, because there is a problem worldwide. So what advice would you give to somebody who wants to be a dramaturg today, to a young dramaturg in training, somebody doing their theatre studies, they're your student, they're very good, they're very bright, they're very interested, they have contacts abroad so they can travel. What advice would you give?
Okay, I don't want to give advices like an expert, but like a fellow that had many problems during its career. So I think most important, being a dramaturg is not just a profession. It is a modus vivendi. And if you decide to be a dramaturg, if you decide to be in it, then you have to live like this. The reason is that if you are a dramaturg, then you never stop working. Everything around is having to do with your work. Sometimes they ask me, how do you manage to do all these things? I don't know, because everything comes together. You always search, you always ask, you always collect material, you always try to understand and explain. And everything can stimulate you, and then you have to stimulate the others with your material. But dramaturgs should also start by respecting themselves. The theater world is not only charming, but it is cruel at the same time. There are so many egos, as you mentioned before, that you have to deal with. So a dramaturg has to believe in himself, herself. Then we have to study hard every day, and also take a knowledge of what is happening around us in the world. We cannot only focus in Greek reality, we have to be open-minded. It is also important to be up to date, because this is a material that will feed us, that will supply our work. And we also have to be, we have to have the ability of synthesis. And you know, it is something like a daily exercise. We get up, we drink coffee, we read the news, we search what is happening around, we try to be connected, and we study non-stop. Very important also is to attend theater.
See
theater, yes. Go and see as many productions as you can. This is really important. And then go with a clean eye. I don't know if this expression is right, but you have to go with a pure
It's called a clear head, I think.
Clear
In other words,
head,
no
okay.
misconception, no, yeah.
Exactly. And when you go home, rethink of everything and note down everything it's coming afterwards. And for a long period in my life, I was in a theater every night. And I still remember my record was 5 shows in a row, one Sunday, matinee, theater for children,
Yeah.
evening performance, night performance, and after midnight show. And it is important that now the dramaturgy is part of the curriculum. And
Yes.
when I'm teaching it, I often ask myself if the skills of the dramaturg are teachable or not. And
yes, is
I have no answer.
No, because is endless curiosity and ability to synthesize and ability to support other people, is it teachable? Well, I suppose, yes, skills can be honed, skills can be defined, skills, individual skills, all the skills you've mentioned, they can all be brought out if the student really has a curiosity for the profession.
And I think that when we work for a dramaturgy, and
yes,
when we give space to the dramaturgs, in a way, we give space to the community. And this is important too.
I think so. I think so. Let's move on to a subject that we touched upon very, very early in our conversation. You said that when you entered the theatre in the 1990s, theatre, and particularly directing in theatre, was very much a male domain in Greece. I would be very, very interested to hear from you a little bit about the role of women in contemporary Greek theatre, and then also then in relation to dramaturgy, but specifically, first of all, generally, and then specifically dramaturgy.
I think more or less the situation is the same, a little bit better or maybe, but more or less the same. You know, we women, we have to give double fights in order to survive. And this is also obvious in my field, in dramaturgy. 80% of the people that study to become dramaturg are women. And I think that this has to do with the mentality, or that a man has to have the leading part in a teamwork.
In other words, that the man leads the team and the woman is there to support.
Exactly.
But don't you think also people maybe take on a dramaturgical study in order for this to lead into directing, hopefully? Do you think there is a connection there or not?
It is. Many male dramaturgs, they become directors afterwards. I don't know if you're asking this thing, if I understand well, but many male dramaturgs become directors, or they're doing something else. They become writers, or they become set designers. Most of them, they don't stay in the field.
But the women do.
The women do.
How very, very interesting. How very, very interesting. In all the years that I was working on in the MA department in London at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, we had many Greek students, and these students came to do an MA in text and performance, which is now also includes dramaturgy, it includes script writing and so on. Interestingly enough, of the 3 students from Greece, 3 students that I remember, of the 5 students I remember, 3 are now working directors in Greece and 2 are working actors. Interesting. But the majority came to England to do a theatre associated course in order to come back and be directors. And out of those 3, 2 are women. In other words, they felt empowered probably by going abroad and then coming.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Interesting, very interesting. So you're not that optimistic about the role of women leading in Greek theatre?
Not really. I'm not really optimistic because even now that someone would say that I did it, I have to give a fight every single day because I'm gonna tell you some. For example, when I got pregnant, there were many people in the theater that told me, "Are you crazy? Are you gonna have a baby? And what about your career? And what about your life? How can you continue working in the theater? It's not a friendly field for parents and kids. The theater."
No.
But we have to give this fight again and again. And who knows what's going to happen in the future.
Indeed. So what models for dramaturgy would you consider for the future?
I would say that for me, the important is that dramaturgs are becoming artists with impact. That they are not only responsive or research dramaturgs,
Yes.
but they are becoming producerial dramaturg, to be an active participant in development process.
In other words, to be a totally accepted member of the creative team.
Exactly.
So they contribute directly to the shape of the show. I understand.
You know, I'm gonna be very happy when I will not search the words to define my job.
Very good. Very good. You just say you're a dramaturg and everybody understands what it is that you can do. Absolutely. But it is, you contribute a lot to theatre in general, to the thinking about theatre. Now, as you do, let's just briefly, before we finish, let's just briefly talk about the new generation of people going into theatre after COVID. You and I have observed the School of the National Theatre, the Drama School of the National Theatre. I know the students, I've met the students of the directing course, and I've met the students, I've worked with the students of the acting course. And the ones that we met when the directing course was created are now graduating, finally, after many interruptions and so on. And I have felt for them in the last 2 years because of the constant breakdowns and interruptions and delays and an improvisation on the part of the management in order to give them the training under impossible circumstances. They're graduating, and I believe that you've met them. Tell me a little bit about the meeting and what you said to them.
There's no many things that you can say to them, because you know a lot of those people, of those young artists, are really disappointed even before they start. So I think the only thing I can tell them, and I persist on this, is that they have to see this crisis, because it is a crisis that what we are living, as a chance, because they are the first to deal with a new transformation, with a new way of rethinking on making theater, on creating art. And in a way, they are lucky because they will invent the new ways of making art. So instead of feeling sorry for themselves, they have to feel blessed. And I don't worry about theater, I don't worry about art. Every crisis in the history has proved to create wonderful plays, wonderful forms of theater, recreating new models of theater.
is very true. That hard human experience, difficult human experience,
yes,
has very often brought about the creation of some of the greatest works of literature and art. But it's difficult to convince young people that
yes,
they will come out of it.
But the capolavori of the humanity are made in crisis, loss, and pain.
And adverse circumstances. That is very, very true. Very few people have created wonderful things in luxury
Exactly.
ease. And no matter how much luxury and ease we want to give them through wonderful training and encouragement, they will have to find their own way through hard times to creating their work. And these are hard times for them. But you've said wonderful things to them. And I hope they've taken it to heart. Irene, I want to thank you very warmly from the bottom of my heart for chatting to us today. It was most stimulating to hear you talk about dramaturgy and talk about theatre. And I'm sure that there will be people clamoring to ask you more questions. So they will have to contact Kalamata Drama and we will direct the emails to you.
That's going to be my pleasure to answer all questions if they have, because this is a stimulation for new projects, new thought. And I thank you, Andrew, so much for the invitation. I'm really flattered because I admire you, I respect your work, and you are, you're a little god for theater. So thank you very much.
Oh, right. Thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I don't see myself as that at all. But it's just me such pleasure to talk to people who contribute to contemporary theatre, and you especially, who contribute with such a wonderful positive quality and a general sense of love and a feeling that you are there to support and people can fall back on you and trust you that you will be there for them. So, dear viewers, thank you all very much for joining us today. Before we finish, I'd like to thank our executive manager, Georgi Liopoulos, for organizing and supervising today's encounter, to Sofia Dracopoulou for controlling the technical aspect of our work. And I hope that you will join us again for future encounters in the Circle of Arts. Our next program, our next event of the series will be a workshop, a creative workshop held live here in Kalamata by British theatre maker Gabriele Moletta. And that will happen in early December. And we hope to be able to stream and film the outcome of that workshop. In the meantime, Irene, thank you very much again, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.